On behalf of the Salt Lake Chamber, welcome everyone to our District 4 Candidate Forum. This is our series of candidate forums which will cover all of the major races across Utah taking place this election year. We invite all of you to join us for each of these forums, and you can find more information on our website at slchamber.com. I'm Nate Collister, and I serve on the Salt Lake Chamber's Board of Directors as well as the head of Utah Commercial Bank at Wells Fargo. I am joined by my co-host Ginger Chin, Vice President of Public Policy and Government Affairs for the Salt Lake Chamber, and we are streaming live today from the Chamber offices.
Thanks, Nate. So today we're going to talk to our candidates, and today we're focusing specifically on Congressional District 4 with Congressman Burgess Owens. Each candidate will take 30 minutes, and we'll get through our questions depending upon the length of the answers of the questions. So I don't want to waste any time. We want to turn our time over to Congressman Burgess Owens of Congressional District 4. Congressman Owens, will you tell us what makes up CD4 and a little bit about yourself and why you are running for Congress again for a second term?
Okay. First of all, it's been an honor to call myself a Utahn, first of all. I have almost 6 kids here, 16 grandkids, which is a miracle. But the reason why I'm so proud is that the tenets, the principles, the values that I grew up in Tallahassee, Deep South in the 60s are exactly what we have here. That's a focus on faith, family, free market, and education. And I don't think anyone does it any better than Utahns. We're very innovative, we think outside the box, we're very service-oriented, we're very embracive. All those things that really make, I think, our country a great country we can find here. What we have to do is make sure we hold on to it and fight for it. It's not by accident that we have the values here. We have to, first of all, be thankful for a legacy of people who understood that and helped us get to where we are, and not let them down by lowering our understanding of what it will take to get us there. So that's actually why I feel so honored to represent the state. I was led here because my dream had been for decades to work with at-risk kids. So I started a program called Second Chance for Youth. And after a couple of years into that, I recognized that the kids here and across the country do not have a chance unless we change the policies in D.C. If our children cannot read, write, if they don't have any idea how positive our history has been, how far we've come, they don't understand their responsibilities to give back instead of taking. If those things aren't put in place and as an education part, then we're going to lose it. And so that was the reason I decided to take that step. I'm so thankful to be there now because our country is at that brink in which we have to, as a people, understand where we are, be educated, be engaged. Whatever we can do and with our talents is make sure we're taking part of bringing our country back to the vision that our forefathers had for us.
Great, thank you. Tell us what portion of the state CD4 is.
Well, we actually, what's nice is that we've just gone from a +6 to +16, which is a much more conservative part of our state. It goes down to, it handles a lot more of the rural area now, which I'm excited about. That's kind of my base. My dad was an agronomist. My grandfather was a farmer. So what you're going to see as I start to put out legislation is more of a representation for that part of the state that we have not until this point been really engaged with. So whether it be South Salt Lake all the way down the western side of 15 down to San Pete, it is again a midget. And what I love about it is the diversity. What Utah's done has been pretty unique is that every representative has a little bit of urban and a little bit of rural. It allows us to be really, I guess, holistic in terms of how we represent. And it's a good place to be, and I'm glad, again, that our state is set up the way it has been.
Great, thank you.
So, Congressman, environmental, social governance, ESG is something we hear about more and more. What is your position on ESG, and do you see ESG financial policies as being beneficial or detrimental to businesses?
It's a threat to our nation, and this is something, thank goodness, as a state, we all have the same feelings. I mean, whether it be federal, state, local, across the board, and we have a remarkable advocate in Marlo Oaks. He understands this. It's a threat to our sovereignty. It's a group of people who decide, actually, based on what their thinking is, what their vision of our world is, that they push down policies that end up hurting our opportunity for free market. Our country is based on the fact that supply and demand and innovation. Because it is an entrepreneurial process of thinking, What we do is we find the best cost, the best product, and we drift toward that. That's who we are. And that's why we've always led the country, the world in terms of our lifestyle, our middle class that we built. ESG is a group of people who think they know best, and they push their ideology, which is very far left, which is very much not practical. We're pushing things, for instance, in terms of green energy, which we all want to get there. But I think as a country, we need to be looking at all the above, look at every options out there, and be practical. If we were to look at the demands right now of those who run ESG, who push BlackRock, push their ideology down, they're saying, in essence, right now what's happening in Florida, the disaster in Florida, we could not run electric cars there. We have to use fossil fuel, and at the end of the day, it's what it comes down to. So we have to be really smart, not push an agenda, an ideology. Let the American people, let those in the free market design that by the product they give, by the cost they give, by the feedback that we get from them, which is our ability to buy the product. Let that drive it, and we'll be in a good shape. ESG will be fighting against. It's now that we understand what they're doing and have been doing for quite a while. By the way, it's interesting how people like this always do it in the dark, behind the scenes. It's not transparent. Whenever there's no transparency, we should always be concerned, whatever that might be, whether it be in education, whether it be in energy. Our goal as a country is be out front. Let's give the facts, let's talk about it. We'll decide which way we want to go, but we don't like stealth. We don't like behind the scenes, and that's what's happening with ESG. The fact we're talking about it now, it's been going on for quite a while, and now we can do something about it.
Thank you.
So Utah's growing. We're growing so fast, and a lot of that growth you're going to see in your district. What can and should be done at the federal level to prepare for the impacts of growth in the state of Utah?
Good question, and you're right, the secret's out. I tell my friends when I get a chance to talk with them, be careful, if you come to Utah and stay too long, visit too often, you will become a Utahn. That's just who we are. We are the fastest growing state in the union in the last 10 years. It's one of the reasons why I'm working so hard to become part of the Transportation Infrastructure Committee. We have not had anyone representing that for the last 20 years. I see Utah in a couple ways. This is the point I'm making to those on the steering committee. There's not a state that is more innovative, more thinking outside the box, more in a position to be a hub of distribution with all the things we're doing, our inland port, the manufacturing we have, and the entrepreneurs across our state. We're in a position to as we figure out how to build our infrastructure so we keep our kids here. And that's something I think we all agree on. We want our children to be able to afford to live here, to stay here, to build their businesses here, and for generations to be around us. To do that, we have to make sure that we're smart in how we build infrastructure out. That's broadband, that's going east to west. As we figure that out as a state, as a culture, we have the opportunity to have that replicated elsewhere. There's no state that is as innovative as we are. So my thought is a win-win. Not only do we have a representation of someone on the committee that can actually talk and advocate for Utah, but Utah can actually be a big influencer for the rest of the country as we come up with our solutions. So I'm excited about that. And by the way, let's just talk about one of the things that we're all aware of, water. That's a big deal. I just came back from this Central Valley reclamation plant here. Innovation again, unbelievable things we're doing. Millions of gallons of water being pushed back from a sewage plant in a way that's been cleaned out. But what we have to recognize is this: we're going to be dealing with droughts, as we have been for the last 20 years. We need to come up with some innovative ideas of how we can bring water here. And I'm looking forward to being on this committee because as we talk about the Keystone Pipeline, bringing oil from Alaska because we needed to have it refined down in the southern states and then pushed out. Why don't we look at water the same way? There are places where water is so abundant, they don't even think about it. And here we are every single year trying to figure out how to make it through with the little bit we have. There has to be a bigger way of thinking about this issue. And being on that committee, I think, and the innovative thoughts we have in Utah, I think we can come up with some ways that we're not year by year worrying about the snowpack if we have enough coming in every year.
Thank you.
Next question is around infrastructure and maybe specifically broadband. And it's, as you know, it's becoming increasingly imperative for individuals to have access to broadband, whether it's for education, healthcare, financial services, a number of things. How should we ensure that our rural communities are connected to broadband?
Very good. Going back again to the 4 tenets that I have started with running from the very beginning that I mentioned that I find so attractive about Utah: faith, family, free market, and education. The free market is what makes our great culture what it is. It's these business owners understand what it is to think outside the box, to have this attitude: if you come to my location with a bad day, I'm going to have you leave with a good day, because they want to keep coming back. That is what builds this remarkable middle class. Education is, again, imperative. It was Thomas Jefferson said, "Ignorant and free can never be." We are a very educated culture, and that's why we have this entrepreneurial spirit. We can think outside the box and figure out issues. Our infrastructure has to be such that we look at it almost, education is our new civil rights. We have to make sure every child, no matter where they live, what zip code, is educated so they can think outside the box and move into that middle class. Infrastructure is something, the broadband is a way we ensure that. I think the COVID allowed us to really see some of the things that we weren't quite aware of. The fact that up north it could be available, not affordable. Down south it's just not available or affordable. This has to be something across the board that we're addressing as a state, that no matter where we live, that our businesses have no limitation. Our education, kids know they can outperform anyone across the state, across the country, across the nation, because they have the same access. So these are things we'll be discussing, again, as part of the Infrastructure and Transportation Committee. And again, part of that will be the water, but all this intertwined. And again, I believe at the end of the day, we have solutions. We just have to figure out how to put our heads together and make that happen.
You talked about water a little bit and the drought. I want to go back there for just one quick second. We're talking about the snowpack, and the snowpack is it's imperative to Utahns for tourism and our economy as a whole. And the snowpack's impacting the Great Salt Lake is a really concern for all citizens. And we hear about it on the national news. We're making national news about the toxicity of the lake bed.
Yeah.
What can you do in Congress? What's your take on how to help the Great Salt Lake?
Well, first of all, we have legislation that as a delegation we have come together with studying, making more studies of that. I mentioned this earlier. Well, the fact is, this last year, 2022, we only had 75% of our snowpack that goes into our reserve. So we're falling short of what we really need to keep the Salt Lake thriving and moving in the right direction. We can either continue to be on a defense, which is, what do we do with the water, the lack of water we have? How can we use it for, I mean, as it is, we've already cut back on our yards. We're trying to figure out ways that we can cut back, but at some point we have to be more aggressive and figure out what can we do to bring more water here. The Colorado River is our artery. That's one we have to make sure we continue to address and to get back. So we can continue to be as conservative as much as we can, or we can go out and start looking at new ways of bringing water here. My goal is to be on the aggressive, or be on the offense. What can we do as a state, as a region, because this is not just Salt Lake, it's our entire region, to come together with a plan to bring water here, like we thought about bringing oil here. That's my initial thoughts. I have not, again, I'm working hard to get on the committee, and that's one of the first things I'll be addressing once I get there, to see if we can come up with ideas that will solve these issues. But it's something that we as a delegation is aware of, as a state, and we just have to go ahead and start figuring out how to resolve it.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Congressman, as we talk to businesses across the state, we hear more and more about the importance of data privacy laws and having standardization across the states. And as you know, it's not very standardized today at all. And as we do more and more e-commerce, right, it's just going to become a greater challenge. And so our businesses are asking for help along those lines. If you were to run a data privacy bill, what would that look like?
And I actually, on the judiciary, did push something out called Access Bill. My background is I was a corporate sales rep for Sprint, Motorola, Nextel. And I was there during the days. You know, we take this for granted now. We take our cell phone, we decide we want another platform, that data goes automatically into that. It's called portability, interoperability. I was there when that was just a conversation that we can actually have that freedom. That should be the way we look at all data. The data is ours. We need to get our minds around the fact that why should we create this data and have to opt out of them using it, as opposed to knowing that that's our data, just like it is when I go from an Android to an iPhone, I can take that and I know there's a certain amount of data that's mine. It's going to continue to follow with me no matter what. My phone number, which is a Philadelphia phone number, will always be a Philadelphia phone number because I brought that with me. Our data, we should be looking at it the same way. Now, part of that is getting our head around the fact it's a paradigm shift. Is the data ours or is it the big tech? I would say most people think it's ours. Allow us to have the free market come in, for there be a competition for who gets it and what they give back to us for it. And we'll find out that it can be pretty exciting, the things we can do to either stop people using it if we don't want them, or develop some type of revenue possibly. And that's where the free market will allow us to get to.
So you're saying allow the consumers to have more control over monetizing, potentially monetizing their
Having
personal
consumer
data?
take the idea that the data that they produce is our data. It's not the big tech's data. And where do we go from there? Well, once we have that shift, all of a sudden we have a lot of options out there of how does that look, what does it look like, and what could be attractive to us to say, I wanted this person to use my data versus the other person, as opposed to 3 or 4 companies using it any way they want to, making a lot of money off it, and then deciding if they want us to have access to their platforms or not. It's a big conversation we need to have. It's all about freedom, and it's all about the idea of ownership. We need to get back to the fact this country is built on the concept of ownership. Once we own things, we can decide how we want to use it, if we want to use it, or give it to somebody else to use. Those are the options we have at that point.
At the local level or at the federal level?
Well, the federal level will actually set up the ways of doing it. For instance, interoperability, portability was kind of set up on the federal side. So now the consumer has a chance to use it any way they want to. The concept has been across the board in a federal way to set up the parameters to make sure that safety is there, make sure whatever is being transferred, there's security based around it. And then how do we want to use it comes up to us in the next move. It's a paradigm shift. And the biggest thing to this is asking ourselves, is that data I just produced by me going from here to wherever, BYU, wherever, Utah, that data, my travel, is now used by somebody. Can I now be able to see opt out, opt in to whether somebody wants to use it? And if they want to opt in, what kind of return can I get because they use my data? A little different way of looking at it.
Yeah, that is a different way. I mean, if I sat here and talked about a certain brand of shoes, it would show up in my feed. It's a little bit scary.
Yep, it is.
All right, so we're going to switch gears just a little bit. Utah has always been an innovator, an innovative state.
Yeah.
What can Congress do? What would you do to promote Utah as that innovator, be at the forefront of industry, not only in the nation, but on a global front?
Just tell the Utah story. I'm telling guys, what I've learned over the last year and a half is how well we do in every industry we take part in. It is a remarkable consistency. And if you go back to why that's the case, it's because we have a culture that's built on getting outside our comfort zone. I mean, I think about this. We're the only culture I can think of that we worked for 18 years to have our kids one day go someplace and no one wants to visit, and we're super excited about it. We celebrate it. We know that when they come back, there's a bit of humbleness, there's a bit of innovation of how to think outside the box, how to approach those things we're uncomfortable with, and that is the foundation of how to serve. That's a foundation that leads to a different type of culture, which absolutely gives this idea of let's figure out an innovative way to solve this situation. Let's not go to the government. Let's figure out how we can do it ourselves. Just leave us alone. Let us build our things. We have, that's why 93% of our businesses here are small business owners. And that, by the way, is something we have to really protect. We have to, first of all, get back to respecting and appreciating what the entrepreneur goes through. Respecting and appreciating the thin blue line to make sure that we have a society that businesses can grow, families can thrive, that we can just take for granted the freedom to come and go as we want to. Those are things that we, as Utahns, kind of take for granted to a point that we have to just kind of become aware. We can't be naive to the fact there are ideologies out there that will destroy us if allowed to go in that direction. So we have to fight against that. We have to make sure that our kids, my strength is, I love my education. My background is that we have to make sure our kids are taught the greatness of our nation, the opportunity of freedom, and the fact that there are ideologies that will divide us every way they can. We cannot let that happen. What's made our country what it is is we find those things that we find in common that we can say might have differences, but what we have in common is more important. And because we do that, we feel as one, we the people. So I think we do that best here. For those who are not aware of Utah, there's no state I've seen that's more diverse. And not only diverse, but we don't care. I mean, at the end of the day, come to the plate with a product that is worthy. Bring value to the plate, and I don't care what the background, culture, none of that stuff makes a difference. And that's the mindset of an entrepreneur. So those are things I guess I would highlight. And believe me, back in D.C., D.C.'s getting an earful of how great our state is. I'm just so proud to have a chance, an opportunity to support it and serve in this way.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying keep the federal government out of it. Is that right?
Yes. Well, and by the way, yeah, how about this? How about this? How about balancing budgets? Mm-hmm. How about those that serve? They understand that they're to serve for a little bit, but to go back and live with what they serve with. I mean, there's so many things we have done right. The collaboration we have between state, federal, private industry, colleges. I'm telling you guys, nowhere have I seen that kind of collaboration, because we are kind of a small state, but we truly punch above our weight. And so we have to never take that for granted. I think we should be very proud of who we are today, what got us to where we are. Have we been a perfect state? Have we been a perfect? Absolutely, no one else has been. And that's why in our Constitution, the words to become a more perfect union is such an important piece. People who understood they were not perfect, but wanted to get better. And that's what we do here in Utah.
Next topic, real easy one, climate and energy. And so what do you think Congress needs to do to address climate problems? And then maybe the second part of that is, as our climate issues impact our energy usage, right? We had record heat this summer. What types of policies can ensure affordable and reliable energy for all of us?
Okay. What I love about our delegation is we're different. We have different focuses. Like I said, mine is education. John Curtis has been a leader, Conservative Climate Caucus. It's the second largest caucus in our conference. And what the difference is in the way John has approached it is Utah. It's a Utah way. There are ways to innovate. There's a way, if we look at all the above, how can we best make sure we have the cleanest energy, the most inexpensive energy, the one that everyone can use, and how can we think outside the box and become better at that? That is opposed to those who have an ideology. There's a certain answer, and that's the only answer, and you're going to take it or leave. You're going to take it or leave it, pretty much. We're not a take it or leave it type of people. We want options. We want choice. We want to be educated, and so we already have in our delegation an expert. So and I'm so proud to be part of that caucus, by the way, because we had our first meeting 2 years ago, and conservatives from across the country came to Utah to see what we were doing here and how we can look at this a different way. Instead of giving this lane up to the far left, let's use it ourselves to see how we can innovate. And we can come up with solutions that would be pretty significant. And part of the solution is all the above. We have to be practical. We can't dictate how fast innovation will go. We can't say that by 2032, all cars will be eliminated. I mean, that is crazy talk. Now, we all know that here in Utah, that's crazy talk, but in California, it's not so. They kind of think that's cool. Until they can't get electricity and all of a sudden they wish they had some fossil fuel. At the end of the day, we look at all the different ways that we can bring energy options to us. Which is the least expensive, which is the one that people want, regardless of maybe comfort or convenience or price. They'll decide which of the factors they want to go with, but everything has been on the plate. I think we need to start having good conversations about nuclear. It's one of the cleanest ways, it's one of the safest ways, and what the left loves to do is to use fear to say, no, we shouldn't look at that. Fracking was a big deal. We were energy independent just a year and a half ago. I mean, just a year and a half ago. Imagine when the price was $2.30 per gallon as opposed to $5. Energy independence and getting this right by letting entrepreneurs work it out is a national security issue. So we have to lean in hard, and I'm thankful for guys like John Curtis, who's actually leading on this to make sure that our state can be a voice in this process.
So we're about 5 minutes now.
Oh my goodness,
I
seriously?
know,
So
the time
fast,
went by
isn't
so
it?
quickly. So I'm going to jump ahead just a little bit. I want to talk about cybersecurity threats. So Salt Lake Chamber was just in Washington, D.C., where we met with you and some of our other leaders. And we talked a lot about cybersecurity. And I think it was Representative Stewart that said, we're almost looking down again at the Russians. So what can Congress do to protect Utahns, businesses, and all Americans from these ongoing threats?
Well, you missed Chris. You mentioned Chris, and let's just say, because he's an intelligence committee, we have such smart people and such strategic, important committees. Chris has to be on that committee. What I love about this, I don't have to be an expert at all this. This one of the areas I'm still trying to learn what we can do. I take my lead, though, from our delegation. Chris Stewart is on that committee that he can say, this is what's happening, this is what's going on, this is how we can actually bite the bullet or whatever we have to do. So we have a seat at the table as Utahns in terms of this very important issue, and it's something that I know we're being attacked every single day. So whether it be hardening our infrastructure or going after those who are actually attacking us and looking at it as a national security act, not just closing our eyes and moving in a different direction. But I'm glad we have somebody sitting at the table and give us the answers that I don't really know how to particularly address. I know we will be as a new conference.
Thank you.
Can I say this also?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We came out with a commitment to America just last Friday before last, as a conference. And not to go into the details, it says exactly what we stand for. And I can highlight it in 4 different ways. We believe, as a conference, as a nation, we owe it to our kids to give them an economy that's strong, a nation that's safe, not only in areas like this, but at the border and in our communities, and a country built, a nation built on freedom. And that freedom piece of it is what I'm talking about with education, make sure we're okay in that particular area, and a government that's accountable. So those are things we believe in, and the tenets will be described within that commitment, but everything we go through right now is what do people, American people, want to be addressed, and the Commitment to America says after a year of studies of 7 task force, this is what we believe in, this is where we want to go.
Thank you.
Time for one more?
Yeah, one more.
All right.
The final question.
Final question, Congressman. If we were all on an elevator together, what would your elevator pitch be for us on why we should vote for you?
Because I believe in the spirit of the American dream. I believe in the tenacity, the freedom, desire of the American people. I believe in the way we started, Judeo-Christian values that we always lean back to give us a reference to where we should be going in the future. I've seen our country become much better over the decades. Becoming a more perfect union is what we're all about. And I'm just thankful, to be honest with you, of being raised in a community where I saw the best of what it was to have obstacles, but have people that were just so optimistic about our country and our values and our future that they pass it on to us as kids. And I'll now live in a state, in a district that feels the same way. So I'm all in. This is something I never thought I'd do as being a politician, never ever thought. I'm so glad I'm there now, because now's our time. We're about to either go over the abyss or bring our country back. I have faith in the American people that we're waking up, we're having conversations like this. It doesn't matter what side of the aisle we're on, by the way. We're having conversations about safety, about security, about our kids. That's going to have us come up with solutions. And Utah will be the leader in that process, as we've done everything else. So I'm excited about that part of it also.
Wow, that's a great way to wrap up. So thank you for your time today. We really appreciate you. We know you have a lot of demands on your schedule. And we just really appreciate you being here today and supporting the Chamber.
Thank you so much. Appreciate everything you guys do, for sure. Thanks so much.
Thank you. So we now turn our time over to Darlene McDonald, Congressional District candidate for District 4. Darlene, we don't know much about you, so will you take just a little bit to tell us about you and why you are running for Congress?
Yes, thank you. I want to thank the Salt Lake Chamber for having me, and thank you, Ginger and Nate, for sitting down with me. I have a career in technology. Over the last several years, I have also been able to venture out into the community on the forefront of healthcare. That's how I got involved in speaking out with policy and politics, I would say, is the healthcare debate. And my background is in technology, but with the healthcare with the ACA, when Congress decided that they were going to rescind the ACA, I decided that it was time for me to speak up. I had a son that was on Medicaid at the time, and I had a son that was on Medicaid, and he lived to be 3 years old, and we were able to get a lot of services for him. And when the Republicans decided that they were going to repeal the ACA, it was time for me to speak up. And so that's how I got started, in using my voice to say, it's time for someone to actually speak to the issues that are really important to the American people when you pass policies that actually impact people. I started showing up at rallies for healthcare. I started showing up at rallies for Save Medicaid. And then it went from there with a lot of the social justice issues as well. And I started to be called when social justice issues, when racism in Utah happened. So I've been out in the community, but how I actually decided to run for office is something a little bit different from that. It is actually, and I know this sounds so cliche, representation matters. And we have real important issues in this country that needs to be addressed front and center. We need people at the table when we're talking about what's happening here in Utah with the Great Salt Lake, which I know that we will probably get into later, but real issues with real representation, with people who are actually in the community and know that community. That's when I said, we don't have that right now. It is time for us to come to the table, be at the table, and speak up and be involved. And that's how I decided to jump in and actually run for this seat.
That's great. Well, I'm excited to jump into some of the issues and get your perspective on some of our questions. So, Nate, do you want to ask the first question?
Yeah, let's do it. So, Darlene, environmental social governance is something we hear a lot about, ESG. What is your position on ESG?
Well, as I speak with constituents in this district and people and my friends that I know, it comes down to, I believe, that when we're looking at organizations and we're looking at companies, it comes down more than just the bottom line. The American people have reached a place where it's not just you don't just measure a company by the bottom line of that company. You want to actually know what they're doing in terms of the environmental impact, the social impact as well of that company, and what they are doing internally to make sure that they are not polluting the air, for instance, that they are not polluting our groundwater. We know what happened in Mississippi recently, where the citizens of Mississippi cannot even drink the water. It also happened here, right here in Utah. I believe it was in Provo not too long ago, where we have little communities that cannot drink their water. So what we don't want is government putting their finger on the scale and telling people or telling organizations what they can and cannot invest in, because that's totally not what the definition of free market is. People should be free to invest however they choose to invest. But it is okay to have a socially responsible company, an environmental responsible company, and be able to have an environmental impact assessment as well that we can look into to see how they grade against other companies.
And as maybe a follow-up to that, do you feel like ESG policies have a detrimental or beneficial impact on businesses?
I believe it's a beneficial impact on people because we must protect our environment. We must protect our future. We must be able to make sure our children have a future, be able to breathe, go outside and play. I have an ad right now. The air was equivalent to smoking 1 pack of cigarettes. And this was done in 2019. So we want to make sure that we are investing in companies that are measuring what is going out into the air so that our children can go outside and play outside. We have one of the highest rates of children that are diagnosed with asthma right here in Utah. So we must pay attention and also reward those companies that are doing the environmental impact assessment and being able to invest in those companies.
So you talk about air quality. Let's get into that a little bit and growth. Utah is one of the fastest growing states in the nation. We hear about it all of the time, and we want to grow in a smart way. What should be done at the federal level to have smart growth and mitigate the impacts of growth?
Well, one of the things that can be done on a federal level, and I'm in technology, so I work in Silicon Slopes, and Utah has our technology sector that we attract people from all over the country and even all over the world. And that's a good thing because we want to push innovation. And what we should do, in Utah, we do a lot of things right here. And one of the things that we do right here is how we approach and address immigration. So one of the things that we can do is expand our H-1B visa for immigrants. What we have happening right now is we have a very low unemployment rate. And there are restaurants, for instance, that are closing on a Tuesday. So we have something in my family called Pizza Friday. And we love Pizza Friday. I started it when my kids were young. I went to get a pizza on Friday, and they had a sign in their window that said closed on Tuesday. And when I asked about that, they didn't have the workers. They didn't have the workers. So we do have a low unemployment number, which is great. We're at full employment. That's great. But what we need to do is encourage immigration. We need workers here. And one of the things that we can do is to expand H-1B visas. We want to do that to also attract highly skilled workers, and especially down in Silicon Slopes, for instance.
Thank you.
Next question is around infrastructure and specifically around access to broadband. And so as you know, it's becoming increasingly imperative for everyone to have access to broadband for education, financial services, healthcare services, so many things. What do you think we can do to help our rural communities get more connected to broadband?
I'm very glad you asked that question because I have done a little bit of research on this. And what I found, and also hearing from some of the constituents, say in San Pete County and Juab County, the broadband actually wasn't the problem. They actually had access to broadband. For instance, what happened during the pandemic when a lot of the children had to homeschool, they couldn't go to school, schools were shut down. They had to learn from home. The broadband wasn't an issue. What was the issue was telecom. The telecom cost is the thing that they were most concerned about. And across the country, the telecom cost has been going up because what do most of us have? A cell phone. So as your customer base move away from a hard line, I don't even know anybody that actually have a landline anymore. But as consumers are moving away from the landline, they are moving towards mobile phones. But companies still have to maintain that infrastructure, and that can be very expensive. So what we should do is to move away from that technology where we actually using landline and move towards voice over IP, because you already have that connected with, usually it's already provided with your internet service provider, your ISP, and it's a lot cheaper to also maintain because they come in a bundle. You bundle this, you get this and this and this. That's usually relatively more cheaper than just having a landline these days. So that's what I know from talking to the constituents of CD4 in San Pete County especially, and also in Juab County. So it wasn't so much broadband, I didn't want to go around that, but it was mostly the cost of telecom.
Yeah, that's very helpful, thank you.
So this is a totally different, we're going to kind of move into a different topic. Drought is on all of our minds. My yard is the ugliest it's ever been, admittedly. But, and the Colorado River has been in the news all of the time. In fact, we're having a webinar on the Colorado River and the water usage and what can Utah use versus Arizona. What should be done to address the shortages of Colorado River?
This is a multi-level issue, and it is on a lot of people's mind. And so I was in DC about 3 weeks ago now, met with President Joe Biden, and unprompted, he mentioned the Great Salt Lake, unprompted, what leads me to believe that this is top of mind, not only for us, Utah citizens, but also for the administration. We must be concerned about what's happening with the Colorado River. Luckily for the residents, and it does impact some residents of CD4, luckily for them, there were members of Congress and in both chambers, the Senate and the House, that voted for the Inflation Reduction Act. Burgess Owens and all of the other congressional delegation did not vote for the Inflation Reduction Act. The Inflation Reduction Act provided $4 billion that will go directly for the Colorado River. And that was negotiated by the senators from California, Nevada, Arizona, Colorado. I think those are the 4 states. Not from Utah. With Mitt Romney and Chris Stewart and Representative Owens, they pushed for and got, I don't think it passed the House yet, $10 million for the Great Salt Lake study, the Great Salt Lake Recovery Act, I believe that's the name of it. But it's a study. It's a $10 million for a study that has already been done. We've known about the Great Salt Lake since 1991. The Colorado River, we need to be able to, and this is what they're doing with the Colorado River. They are working with local communities along the Colorado River to conserve the water. And if we can improve that by, I would say, 20 or 30%, that will help the Colorado River. And the reason why this is important, and bear with me because I know this gets into the weed a little bit, because it's like I'm trying not to get into the weeds, so I'm trying to parse my words a little bit. The power for California comes from the Hoover Dam, which was formed by the Colorado River. And as the Colorado River and the Hoover Dam and Lake Powell and Lake Mead all reach their dead pool level, the hydroplanes, or the turbines, cannot spin. And I know that gets into the weed a little bit, but that's why this is so much of a concern. Because 1.3 million people will lose power if you don't have enough water for it to spin and generate that energy and generate the electricity. So for those senators to fight for that $4 billion for the Colorado River, to get the farmers to lay fallow their land, for instance, to invest in plants that doesn't use so much water, and also work with the local communities on ways that they can improve water conservation. Because sometimes you just don't know that you're wasting too much water. So working with the local communities and hopefully being able to replenish that. But one of the things that I wanted to bring up, and hopefully I'm not going too long on this one, but one of the things too I wanted to bring up is perhaps, and I don't know if it has been looked at, but this is why we need diverse voices at the table, is maybe these states, these western states, can buy water rights from California that doesn't increase the expense that they have for desalination of the process that they're doing. And they also won't lose any access to their water. But it'll be a way for the western states to be able to conserve water and to get water as well, is by buying water rights from California. I don't know if that has been considered for the western states, but this is something that I think that we can at least bring to the table. And if we have senators and representatives that will actually sit at the table and work with people across the aisle, we can try to find these solutions. As I was saying, this is the reason why I ran, so that we can find some of these solutions.
So what I hear you saying is all ideas should be on the table at this
All
point.
ideas should be on the table, especially for this, because it will impact the quality of life that we have here in Utah, up and down Utah, not just the Wasatch Front, but up and down Utah.
As we talk to businesses across Utah, we hear more and more about the need for standardization of data privacy laws. And as you know, it's not very standardized today, and it creates issues. And as we do more and more e-commerce, which we know is inevitable, there's going to be greater challenges. So if you were to run a data privacy bill, what would that look like?
This is again another story. Because most people have more data on that cell phone than they do in a safe in their house. How to protect that? So there is something called GDPR, and General Protection Regulation, Privacy Regulation. That's it, Privacy Regulation, which is a EU standard for how to protect our data. We don't necessarily have a standardized privacy policy here in the United States, and that is costing small businesses and tech companies billions of dollars trying to keep up with the regulatory implementation of that. If you have a GDPR, or you have a privacy platform for all 50 states, that is a lot of regulatory hurdles that small businesses must have to overcome, and that gets very expensive. So this is something that all technology companies will get behind, actually, and Utah leads in one of that. I would model the California Privacy Act because it is the closest to GDPR. New York also has one. It's not as restrictive as California. So I would go that route as one that is more within the United States. We could say, yeah, let's model GDPR. You do have a model. That's the thing. You don't have to start from scratch. There are models. But this is something that must be done on a federal level. We do need to have a federal standard for GDPR. And all of the tech companies from Meta, formerly Facebook, Microsoft, they will all very much be on board with it because it is costing them billions of dollars every year.
So Darlene, I'm going to skip ahead just a little bit for the sake of time. You mentioned a passion for healthcare.
Yes.
So I want to ask you a couple of healthcare related questions. First, the opioid epidemic is disrupting Utahns, and particularly in the rural communities. What should be done to address these issues?
This is, again, a multi-level issue. Are you happy? When you fill out your survey from your doctor, are you happy? That, whatever you said on that survey, impact whether or not that doctor will continue to prescribe opioids or something for you. Pain management or dealing with pain is something people don't usually like to do. If they hurt, they want to fix this now. I don't want to feel pain. That was the driver, unfortunately, behind the overprescribing opioids. That was the number one driver. Not being able to manage pain, and doctors wanting to score really high on their customer satisfaction score. That was the driver of it. This led to what we have right now is an opioid crisis that must be dealt with. We have to. We have begun the process of punishing the bad actors, the doctors who did overprescribe opioids to their patients. The process of being able to sue, like Pfizer, I think it was Pfizer, one of those companies, the prescription drug companies that pushed doctors to prescribe these opioids as well. So lawsuits have started along that line. But we also must, as citizens of the United States, I believe we also must move away from being a prescription care and being a well care environment. We don't focus on the actual root or the source of the issue. We focus on the symptom, how to treat the symptom of a pain rather than getting to the root of the problem. And this comes back to why I decided to run in the first place, getting to solving the actual problem and not just the symptom. And this goes to our healthcare as well, making sure that people have access to healthcare, making sure that they are focused on being well, keeping weight down, keeping anything that are drivers for hypertension. African Americans, definitely. Watching your diet, how to pick better foods, making sure we don't have food deserts. These are things that we can focus on so that we can move towards a well environment rather than just a prescription environment.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So maybe just another follow-up question on healthcare, especially given your passion for it. Healthcare costs rank among the highest expenses for businesses, especially for small businesses, which can make it really hard to hire full-time workers. What do you think can be done to maybe temper some of these healthcare costs?
I really hope I don't get in trouble with this answer. I probably will get in trouble with this answer. Our businesses, especially small businesses, don't want to be in the healthcare business. They have no business being in the healthcare business. How we even got businesses involved in the healthcare business was right after World War II, and there was a cap on salary. So a way to attract talent to these companies was to give them healthcare. It was a benefit. Salary didn't go up because when you look on they have a different line item for that. Salary didn't go up, so it didn't infringe upon the wage cap, but also it is taxable as well. We must, I'm going to get in trouble. We must move towards a single payer system. We must. It will help GDP because most of the money that we spend in GDP is in healthcare. That's also along the lines of being a well-care system instead of a prescription system. Companies don't want to be in the healthcare business. They shouldn't be. With my son, he was born with pulmonary valve stenosis, which means the valve from his lung was too narrow to pump the blood between the heart and the lungs. He had to have 2 open heart surgeries before he was 4 pounds. 2 open heart surgeries when he reached 4 pounds. Because I worked for a small company at that time, the HR director came and pulled me aside and asked me if I would write a letter to the insurance company because what they were spending for my son to keep him alive impacted the premium for the entire company. So they wanted to know if he needed any more surgeries. I had to write a letter. Yeah. Companies don't want to be in the healthcare business. We should work towards removing that barrier. And not only that, it will also create innovation. Because when you have the healthcare exchanges and people can go to the healthcare exchanges and they're not tied down to a job because they need healthcare that job provide, that will encourage them to go into business for themselves, innovate, create. That is what we want. We don't want people to be, as we call, the golden handcuffs because they're tied to those companies because they can't afford to lose their healthcare.
Thank you.
So I'm going to jump to the last question. And if a stranger was on the elevator with Darlene McDonald and they said, why should I vote for you? What would your pitch be?
First of all, I would say my name is Darlene McDonald. It is a pleasure to meet you. I am running for office because representation does matter, as much as cliche that may be. It matters if we are sitting at the table forming policy that matters for the American people. We have real problems in this country. We have real problems right here in Utah. If we don't get behind and solve the problem with the Great Salt Lake, unfortunately, we may not have the beautiful, wonderful Utah that we all call home. I love my home. I love living in Utah. I love hiking in the mountains. We don't want to be another Beijing where we have to put on a mask because we can't go outside and we can't breathe the air because of toxic dust. We need people at that table who are going to be willing to work across the aisle with Republicans and Democrats to solve these problems. Whether you voted for me or not, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, whether you're an independent or nothing at all, I will still represent you. I will show up when you need me, and it doesn't matter if you voted for me or not. And this is your floor, so you have to get off. And it was a pleasure meeting you. Thank you.
Wow, Darlene, thank you. You did a great job today. We really appreciate your time and your passion. And that concludes our candidate forum for District 4. And I think that wraps it up. Nate, anything else?
I would just say thanks to the staff of the Salt Lake Chamber, Policy Impact Communications, and to the your campaigns for the support of this event today. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you for having me.